Welcome to Fast Politics, Andy.
I'm out.
Let's talk about how great everything is going. Everything is going great. It's going great.
Yeah, I was sitting here because it's been like a month or maybe more since I've potted, and I was like, all right, I got to get my head back in the game. I wonder what we're going to talk about, and I was like, there's just like
There's
every 10
nothing.
minutes there's something new.
So we're in this government shutdown. We're almost a month of like business days into the shutdown. Okay. Donald Trump is on his second trip. He's in Asia. The administration has decided they're not going to fund food stamps for children. It's like people are like, stop talking about the East Wing. The East Wing isn't where it is. No, everything.
Yep.
It's like it's one of those things where you have to, I feel like the situation is you have to focus on all the things.
Yeah, nothing is a distraction. Everything is happening. They are doing everything they're doing for a reason. And it's all the same reason. It's all in service of sort of getting us used to this authoritarian style of government. And whether it's shutting the government down, to I don't even know what their latest, whatever their latest excuse is, as an attack on trans people, which is what it seems to be half the time.
Just speaking of attacks on trans people, we just saw a trans woman at Bennington who
Yeah,
no,
horrible,
at
horrible.
Middlebury who killed herself.
In
Like,
Vermont, yeah.
just one of these, lest you think that abandoning trans people is merely a question of, like, electoral politics, it's actually a moral imperative.
100%. And I was able to say I've been saying that for a while, but I have been saying that for a while. And going back a few years in talking to people, I would occasionally have someone say, "Why are you so hepped up on the issue of trans rights?" And there's two reasons. One is, it's a cliche, but when you say something like, X rights are human rights, whether it's trans, gay, black women, whatever it is, it's true
Right.
because nothing ever stops at a certain line. And so even if in some kind of addled brain, you're like, I don't care about trans people, or, they creep me out, or, oh, there's so few of them. What does it matter? It all matters. It
Right.
should matter just because they're people.
Right.
And you shouldn't be sitting there saying, oh, these people, their rights don't matter. But even if that's the way you see the world, then please realize that you're next. and
Exactly.
and stop thinking you're safe, because you're not. And the other thing is, I think what's happening to trans folks is in my mind, it's always been sort of the nearest parallel to the Jews in Germany. People will say, oh, well, we don't want to take away their right to exist. They just shouldn't play sports. Yeah, because that's how it always starts with one thing. We're not saying we're going to put Jews in camps. We just think they shouldn't do whatever. And it always starts that way. And we're really seeing now it's so far beyond the sports thing. And,
Right.
the sport thing was always a stalking horse for people on the right, even if there were centrists and, some liberals who didn't get that.
But I also
Go
think
ahead.
more than that, like trans rights is like one of these issues that there has been polling that shows that some people are uncomfortable with it, not the majority, but
Right.
a vocal minority. And so this is how we got here, right? And it is just so appalling. It's morally wrong, but I also think it's politically just disgusting. But I want you to talk about being a veteran for a minute because you and Pete Hegseth, you'll remember Pete Hegseth as being a very handsome guy who loves beer. He just likes beer, like Brett
Uh-huh.
Kavanaugh. You may remember Brett Kavanaugh from the
Also,
famous
yeah.
Kavanaugh stops.
Yep.
Also a beer drinker, also a weekend Fox News host like you. Discuss.
Okay, first of all, I was never a weekend Fox News host. I'd like to get that straight. Second of all, it sounds like you're blaming beer for all of this, and I don't like that. I don't like that you're doing that. There's a lot of good beer out there, and I don't think the bad beers. We shouldn't say that all beer is bad.
Right.
Look, Pete Hegseth he's a goober. I saw the story earlier today where he talked about There was a story, I think, in the Independent that talked about him allegedly refusing to meet with bearded soldiers
Yes,
or bearded troops.
he's
Yeah,
very looks conscious, my man.
yeah,
And
yeah,
it makes sense because looks are really where it's at for him.
yeah, for
Like
sure.
if your looks were such an enormous part of your if the package was 90% looks
Mhm.
and 5% something else and 5% competency, you would care very much about looks.
So I saw that story, and I just like he was refusing to meet with bearded troops, and I just like I don't know why can't remember the last time I used the word goober, but it just popped
Yeah,
into my
Goober's
mind.
a good one though.
I was like, what a goober. And my second thought was, as someone who served overseas, and at some point we had some high level official come visit. I think I was at Camp Casey in South Korea. It's a drag. Nobody wants those people there. It's a drag for the troops. It's like parades. We hated parades. It's you had to be forced into doing parades, and you had to be basically ordered to go meet with these high level officials who come in
Right.
and generally have no idea what your day-to-day situation is like, but are there to somehow impart their wisdom. But everything that he is doing, like it's amazing to me. I mean, but I say this every day. The fact that he still is Secretary of Defense and not Secretary of War, as again, this independent piece that I saw, the British newspaper kept referring to him as the Secretary of War. Like, he's not the Secretary of War. Why are you saying that? You got him, you got Patel. How do you rank them, Molly? How do you rank them in terms of how
How do you
awful they
rank
are?
who is the least competent?
Yeah.
Okay, so I'm gonna go with I think Hegseth is the least competent. And in fact, I'm gonna ask you a question about this because, like, if you are a sergeant or whatever the highest level is, a lieutenant colonel, and you're in Japan, okay, with your staff of 5, 10 people who are with you, you're doing some kind of high level, really important mission. It's top secret, nobody knows. Maybe it's whatever. You're called back to DC, Virginia. You and all your people all go back. And you are called back to a speech about facial hair and then a campaign speech by Trump. Like, are you then like, these are the people I'm really glad I work for? Or are you then
No.
like, right? I mean, as someone I've never served. So tell us what the vibes there would be.
Look, I was a lowly enlisted man, so I can't really get in the head of a general or an admiral, someone at that level who would have been summoned to Washington for that insane, I wouldn't even call it wasn't a meeting. I don't know what you would call it. It was like an Amway type thing, is what it
And
struck me as. Like it was
it's
some kind of
ironic because there are people involved in Amway, like who are involved in this administration. So it's
oh,
perfect.
absolutely. It struck me as some kind of MLM type thing. But I'm sure they were pissed off. I'm sure
Yeah.
they were just, on the plane rides home, sitting next to each other going, what the fuck was that? Like, I cannot imagine. And look, there are people who rise to various ranks in the military who shouldn't be there.
Right.
So I'm not saying there aren't some generals or whoever who thought that this was like, yeah, this is the gung ho shit we need, but I have to imagine the vast majority of these guys who have spent 20, 30 years in uniform taking what they do seriously. I cannot imagine that they were in that meeting and thought, okay, well, you know what? I was skeptical before I went, but hey, that was really good. I feel much better about my job now. I feel much better about our operational readiness. Yeah, no, I mean that was absolutely it was a pathetic joke, is what it was.
There's so many moments in this administration where they have sort of squandered goodwill. And if you think about like when Trump came in, he had sort of this bump, right? Not the kind of thing he didn't have the first time. He had
Yeah,
this sort of bump where people are like, maybe this will work. I don't know what they were thinking. But now, after the trade war, the government shutdown, SNAP benefits, that all of the insanity, now he's finally polling the lowest he's ever polled, which is still somehow not
I know.
zero.
I know. I know. Every time I see that, I'm like, okay, that's low, but really? That many
Have the
people
do the
still?
other people not exist? Like, what
I,
happened?
I don't know. I don't know. That's one of the reasons, by the way, I don't think you say anything is a distraction,
Right.
because the idea is they are trying to do as many things as they can while they can.
Mm.
And, I mean, look, we'll see what happens going forward with elections, but there have to be there has to be some sense, among the smarter people around him, and that's on a sliding scale, obviously,
Right, exactly.
that this is not Mussolini, this is not Stalin, who's going to be in power for decades or whatever,
Are you
and they need to.
saying that the oldest person to ever become president is old, or how dare you?
All I know is he passed his dementia test, or so he claims. Like,
And
we
he
don't even
had
know
an
if he passed it.
MRI. By the
And he
way,
got,
and he had an MRI. Let's talk
yeah,
about this. So my man is giving a speech and he's like, I had an MRI and they didn't find anything. There was in his second physical of the year. Do you remember
yeah,
his second one,
yeah,
the one that
yeah,
was 4 months later than his first yearly
yeah,
physical? It said advanced imaging.
yeah.
And some people who we know were like that this is the advanced imaging. The White House was like, nothing. Like, how dare you, libtard,
Yeah.
think that we, cock owned. The real enemy is the left. And then he's like, oh, yeah, I got an MRI.
Well, look, the only thing I'll say, because we don't know what the MRI was for.
Probably for
Well,
nothing, as people
well,
get them all the time. I mean, I got one just an hour ago
but the thing is, if, as
for
someone who has a
miles.
relative who's going through this, if you have a cognitive test, which is what he took, not an IQ test, it's the Montreal, I forget the status, the complete name. If you have that test and an MRI close to each other, there's a good chance there's one thing that they're searching for, that is dementia. Again, I don't, maybe he had an MRI of his hand where he has that weird, whatever
Or his ankles,
or
where
his
his
ankle.
very
Yeah.
puffy ankles.
But I'm
No,
I'm just saying, if you have an MRI, an undisclosed MRI, and by the way, if you have it on a joint or whatever, you usually say, yeah, I had a shoulder MRI, I had a wrist
yeah.
MRI. The only time you say I had an MRI in that position and you don't say what it's for, to me, is it's probably your brain.
I think what's most important, though, about this like Trump discourse is that, in fact, he is not doing like even any autocrat like Vladimir Putin, these guys, like they give a carrot and a stick. So they give a carrot. We have yet to get a fucking carrot. Where is the goddamn carrot?
Well, he has discovered something. He has discovered that if he gets the carrot, there's a group of people who are like, right on, we're
Right.
getting the carrot.
Right, that is true. Like the Qatari plane. It was like,
Right.
owned libtards.
Right.
We
Or
got
built,
this free
or I don't
plane
know.
that's costing the taxpayers $1 billion.
Yeah, or converting the East Wing into a ballroom. And apparently there are people out there who go, he's doing this for us.
Yeah,
This is for me. He is
yeah,
helping me by
yeah,
building this ballroom, by getting this plane, by,
yeah.
pardoning or commuting the sentence of the Binance guy.
Because that
Uh,
finance guy, he's a man of the people of
but
China.
but there's like a solid, I would say, I don't know, fifth of the country that just believes that somehow. That's not a bad base to start from, where there's anything you can do anything, and you can say this is to make America great again, and they're going to go, America,
Yeah,
fuck yeah,
yeah.
we are so much stronger now because we're going to have a ballroom in the East Wing. So I think that's what he's figured out, is that the carrot can just be for him and his people. And, his people are the ones that own Twitter. His people are the ones that own the Washington Post.
Yeah.
And the list goes, his people are the ones who now own Paramount and CBS, and maybe
Mm-hmm.
soon will own Warner Brothers and CNN.
Yeah.
And so as long as he helps those people and gives them the carrot, like, he has sort of figured out that may be all he has to do. Hopefully he's wrong about that. But I think that in his mind that's where the carrot is. It's not for us, Molly.
So the question is, on Sunday, Zoran was in Forest Hills at this like lovely stadium. I'm sure you've been there. It's a beautiful Forest
I
Hills
have. Yeah.
stadium. Yeah.
Molly, I saw the band Asia there.
Okay. What is that?
That was a huge band. Heat of the Moment back in the
I
day. Come on.
I don't know anything, but
Oh,
it was like 13,000 people. New York mayor's race. No one has ever given a fuck about the New York mayor's race.
yeah.
It's likely no one ever will again. They were chanting, tax the rich. Now we have the richest cabinet ever in history. Donald Trump's cabinet, literally everyone. There's like one person who's 100 millionaire. That's the poorest person in there.
Right.
You see any connection between these two things or no?
Well, I don't know, Molly. What do you think? Yeah, of course there's a connection.
Well,
I mean, no,
I'm just saying. I'm not
I
seeing
know.
a lot of people putting it together. So
No, but look, and I'm, spitballing on the number here, but if you figure there seems to be a solid 20% of the people who, no matter what Trump does, they love him and they think he's doing it for them. There is the flip side of that, which are the people, first of all, there are the people who have always said, was it tax the rich or fuck the rich?
or eat the rich.
Or eat the rich. Well, there's a solid percentage that have always said that, but I do think that's spreading to more, I guess for lack of a better word, normies. Not the people like us who force feed this information into our brains every day to our great detriment, but the people who actually have lives is who I'm talking about here.
You have to wonder if the largest transfer of wealth from the poor to the rich, from the middle class to the rich, this skinny Obamacare repeal and these cuts to Social Security, Medicaid, and also to various other things might have something to do with this.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Look, it's just too bad the Democrats didn't have a candidate in 2016 and, 2020 who was sort
The
of saying
populist.
things like these. But enough about Bernie.
Well, let's talk about this. Populism is clearly popular,
Yeah.
and Americans are clearly very mad. So one would think that Democrats might want to hear the message of Zoran instead of fear the message of Zoran.
Yeah, I just think most Democrats are not temperamentally suited to that. And I think, your Hakeem Jeffries your Chuck Schumer's and all those folks they are as terrified of left-wing populism as they are of right-wing populism, if not more so. Sometimes it really does feel like it's more so. And you see it when they occasionally try, when Chuck Schumer posts something on social media that's vaguely populist, it just reeks of you don't mean this.
Pandering?
Yeah, and it's just that's not who he is. That's not who most of them are. And I think that's unfortunate. And I think that's not serving the Democrats very well in this age that we're in, where, as you said, there is so much anger. And the thing is, it's always the question of who are you angry at? Are you
Right.
angry at the rich people who are paying no taxes and who are paying really low salaries to the rest of the people, if not eliminating their jobs completely? Or are you mad at the people who don't look like you? That's the fundamental difference between left and right wing populism. I'm simplifying things here, but the right wing populists are the ones who want all the immigrants gone because they believe falsely that the immigrants are taking their jobs. It is the fault of immigrants that their life hasn't turned out the way they wanted it to. They never sort of make that connection that no, it's the fault of the people in charge of the whether we want to call it an oligarchy or whatever. But to me, that is the fundamental difference. And it feels like there are times when the Democrats are more comfortable with pandering to that group of people, whether it's on the trans issues like we discussed, whether it's on immigration, where the Democrats have always been at best Republican light. Kamala did not run an open borders campaign.
No.
She ran a basically let's do everything that we've been doing, but maybe be a little nicer about it.
Yeah. A little nicer. Andy Levy, will you come back?
Yes.
Okay, good.
Yes, I had to hear from my people.